Hey there, welcome to the DFS Build NFL edition. This is for the Week 14 main slate. Already knocked out a Thursday Night Football video. You can catch that at the end of this. It won't be at the end of this video, but if you go to our channel at the DFS Build on YouTube, you should be able to find it, no problem. You can also catch NBA DFS Builds, our videos for the main slates for NBA DraftKings every single day, and we have one out for today as well. Right now it is Thursday, but I'm still punching out this main slate. So the goal obviously is to help you. If any of this does help you, smash the like button. Also subscribe to the channel. Free advice, me just walking through the slates and pointing out my favorite plays and kind of just looking at everything, whether it be projections or matchup or, early ownership. The goal is to help you win. So if you like free content and you like winning, you should be following us. Also, don't have any reservation about getting involved in the community as far as engaging with the video on the bottom. Drop your favorite play of the week. Drop any questions you have for the week, and you can do the same for our other videos for NBA and so forth. So we're going to break it down position by position. I'm not going to touch on every single player because that's insane. I'm not going to tell you everybody looks good because that's also insane. I'm really just going to highlight my favorite plays and just touch on the other options that, I might like them, but they're not necessarily going to be priorities for me based off of price or whatever it may be. So let's get to it. At quarterback, remember, smash the like button and let's get going here. Sam Darnold is the top play of the slate at quarterback, undoubtedly. 6.1K facing the Falcons defense that has not been hard on quarterbacks at all. They're bottom 10 against fantasy quarterbacks on the year, and it just looks like a really good matchup. Falcon, a big game for both these teams, Falcons and Vikings. Vikings trying to keep pace in the NFC North, and the Falcons at this point just trying to get into the playoffs and obviously fighting for the division in the NFC South. So I think it's going to be really a big game. You got the whole narrative of Kirk Cousins coming back to Minnesota, so that's true. You can definitely look at the Falcons side of this game if you would like to. I personally prefer to go Vikings, and Darnold has been kind of smashing. Let me just actually pull up his game logs here real quick. That part that was not up for me. Just bear with me 2 seconds here. Let's see. Okay, nope, that's the wrong slate. All right. This is going horribly. I'm not pulling up the right thing here. Okay, 6.1, Sam Darnold. All right, here we go. Yeah, so last week he looked like a really good play. He didn't really crush or anything against the Cardinals because I did say that was not actually that good of a matchup, but he was just fine at 19 fantasy points, and he's had at least 19 fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. Would certainly expect him to hit that or more against Atlanta, so he looks like a really good play at that price. Jalen Hurts against the Panthers is a really good play. I don't have a problem with him. He's just really expensive. And I think, with Darnold coming in with a better projection, I think I just prefer Sam Darnold. Hurts obviously has a way higher ceiling, a better floor in general, and arguably the better matchup. The Panthers have also been bad, bottom 5 against quarterbacks on the year. So I got nothing bad to say about that matchup whatsoever. Hurts and or Saquon Barkley are going to smash here. And then obviously stacking Hurts with AJ Brown, totally fine. But when it comes to price, I want to get other studs too. So just paying up at quarterback when you can maybe get that production at a cheaper rate, it's just not something I really want to do. There's a lot of running backs and wide receivers that you can play in terms of just, slots available in your roster at DraftKings. So that's just my personal strategy. If you want to build around Hurts, go for it. But right away, Sam Darnold is the first guy to look at. I actually don't really like Josh Allen this week. I think traveling, 2,000 miles from Buffalo to LA to play the Rams is a trap. The Bills are obviously competing for the number 1 seed in the AFC. So sure, maybe they'll come to play and everything, but the Rams have been really good. It's not as good of a matchup as they've been enjoying recently. And just like the travel aspect, I think it's going to be a bigger deal than anybody wants to admit. So while you can never say never with Josh Allen, it's just not something I'm going to do. If I'm going to pay all the way up there, I'd rather pay for Jalen Hurts. He's in a way better spot. But again, I'd rather also just take the 2K savings to play Sam Darnold. I think Kyler Murray is absolutely in play at his price at 6K. Again, I'm just going to pivot and prefer Sam Darnold, even if he's chalkier. Kyler Murray did not do well last time against the Seahawks. The Seahawks do have a pretty good defense. It is a pretty huge game for the top of that division, basically. Just real quick, let me check the rundown of what Kyler's been doing lately. I mean, the price is nice, but 17 fantasy points in his last game. So, he didn't completely kill you there if you played him against the Vikings, but 11 against Seattle, 5 against the Bears. He does still have a ceiling, 25 plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 5 games, 21 plus fantasy points in 3 of his last 6 games. So, the ceiling is there and it's a huge game. So I wouldn't be totally shocked if he did it. So at 6K, I do not mind him. And if you want to, reverse pivot here, so to speak, and go get somebody like Murray who does have a ceiling, does have dual threat ability, and is going to be about half as owned as Darnold, I see good logic there as far as this GPP play. But honestly, I just don't see the need to do it. I think Darnold is the better play. Geno Smith at 5.8K in that same game. I'm not really feeling it. I think he's fine. I think Brock Purdy at 6.2 is fine. I would rather just go get Baker Mayfield. If I'm not going to pay for Sam Darnold and I'm not going to pivot to Kyler Murray, I'd just rather go get a chalky-ish Baker Mayfield. He underwhelmed a little bit against the Panthers last week, but this should be a smash spot against a pretty leaky Raiders defense that is bottom 10 on the year and is approaching bottom 5 over the last 4 weeks. So it's a really good spot for quarterbacks in general. Tua just completely destroyed the Raiders a couple weeks ago. Patrick Mahomes has been disappointing like all the time, so I wouldn't really read too much to that in a divisional game from last week. So Baker is possibly worth paying up for at 6.4K. I do not mind it. I would probably rank him second though behind Darnold. Right now I'd go Darnold, Baker, and then probably Hurts. But again, I don't really want to go pay all that money for Hurts. Other options that look kind of interesting. Jameis Winston. Okay, the Steelers are not a good matchup, no doubt about it. Okay, I'm not gonna beat around the bush there. They're not a friendly matchup, but let's just note that he had 38 fantasy points on the road against the Broncos. The Broncos have a very good defense. They had 2 pick sixes against them. He had 497 yards and 4 touchdowns at 5.4K, even in a tough spot, which, by the way, Jameis Winston did have 15 fantasy points in a win against the Steelers 2 weeks ago. He can still get there, and then, the Browns lose or the Steelers defense still is good or whatever. So I think at 5.4, he's definitely worth a try in tournaments. Just a really cheap price for a guy who clearly has insane upside. Do I feel amazing about the spot? No, I don't. I just think the price for what he's proven he can do is pretty nice. On the other side of that Sam Darnold game is Kirk Cousins at 5.5K. He really has not been great on the year. But last week, 4 interceptions, 6 fantasy points. It's back-to-back weeks of 6 or fewer fantasy points. And he's not exhibited much of a ceiling at all. He's got 2 games on the year over 20 fantasy points. So do I feel really good about Kirk Cousins? No, but there is the narrative of revenge going back in Minnesota. Vikings are a pass funnel defense, and he's 5.5K. So I think all of that makes him an interesting tournament play. Not a priority for me, but he is worth noting. 2 more guys that I kind of like here. A really deep punt would be Aiden O'Connell. Projects pretty darn well considering he's only 4.8K. And it's mostly a price play, but he did have 23 fantasy points against a good Chiefs defense last week, so that's certainly worth noting. But also the Buccaneers have been a bottom 10 defense against quarterbacks over the last 4 weeks, and they're second to last on the year against fantasy quarterbacks. So it's really a good spot, to be honest. I do not mind firing up Aiden O'Connell and stacking him with Jacoby Myers and Brock Bowers, and even Trey Tucker to a lesser extent. But it's not like I want to hitch my wagon to Aiden O'Connell, but the projection's pretty good for the price, and he's a major salary saver. So I would put him in my top 5 of quarterbacks that I like for the week just because of the salary and matchup. The other guy I wanted to mention was going to be Tua Tagovailoa. I never like trying to rattle his name off quickly because sometimes I can just butcher names. It's just something I do. But at 6.3K against the Jets, he looks really good. The Jets defense, in theory, is tough on quarterbacks, but that has not been the case over the last 4 weeks. They're second to last over the last 4 weeks. So if that trend is going to continue, which why wouldn't it? They're done. They're 3-9. They're not going to make the playoffs now. And the Dolphins at 5-7 need to win out to make the playoffs. I wouldn't be shocked if Tua just keeps it going. He's been wrecking like every single game. Let's see here. He had 28 fantasy points against the Packers last week, 31 against the Patriots, 23 against the Raiders. He's feeling it. He's got his weapons there. They're all healthy. So Dolphins across the board look pretty darn good. I have no problem there. I still think Sam Darnold's the top play. The only problem at all with Sam Darnold is he's going to be owned. So I have no issue at all dropping down a little bit and taking shots on other value guys. The my favorite value is Aiden O'Connell. I think it's really going to be fun to try him at 4.8K. But if you're at all worried about any of those quarterback options, you can just play it safe and play Sam Darnold. Not to say you can't play anybody else I didn't mention. It's just they're not going to be priorities for me. The guys I pointed out and highlighted are the ones I like the most. Over at running back, Alvin Kamara, once again, for like the fourth game in a row, comes in as uber chalk. And he also has the best projection. That's also for the fourth game in a row. He just has a massive role, and that role is only growing now that Taysom Hill is done for the year. Kamara has he's not met expectations over the last few games, but he's still been fine. Like if he wasn't majorly chalky and coming in with 24 to 28 point projections, you'd be like, okay, fine. I guess it's okay. He's had 15, 12, and 18 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So he's been okay. 23 rushes last week, 112 yards, 4 catches, just massive, massive role. And now Taysom isn't there to eat into his, general touches and red zone opportunities. So Alvin Kamara looks like a smash on this slate. Best projection, his prices come down to 8K flat. That is way too cheap. I really, really like him. The only deterrent at all would be the ownership. And by the way, he gets the Giants, who are second last against fantasy running backs over the last 4 weeks, and they're the Giants. So we can definitely look at Alvin Kamara and not even think twice about it. The question is, who's the other guy you're going to pair with him? I mean, Saquon Barkley looks amazing. The only issue with him is his price. 9K is a bit rich, but the Panthers are an amazing matchup. So if you have the funds, I don't know if you really can afford to stack them together, but maybe you can if you pay and go get Aiden O'Connell. That is a possibility. That said, Barkley is like half the ownership of Kamara. So you could pay $1,000 more and just hope that Kamara keeps busting. That is an option too, but they both look really, really good. Bijan Robinson's price has come down to 7.5K. The Vikings are not a fun matchup. I do not think I want to do that. However, have I learned my lesson? I said I wasn't really high on Bijan last week. And what did he do? He, of course, went off for 28 fantasy points. I mean, he's been really good. 21 plus fantasy points in 4 of his last 5 games. It's just not a good matchup. I would rather target the Falcons passing game personally. And honestly, it's like if you miss out on 7.5K Bijan, does it really matter if you have Elvin and Barkley or Achane or whoever else and they end up smashing too? It's not really that big of a deal. It's just when a matchup is that glaring and it's on the road, I would probably personally just go away from it. I mentioned Devon Achane against the Jets. Jets have gotten chewed up by running backs quite a bit on the year. You can keep playing Achane. His price has come up, but he seems to be kind of worth it. He's had 20 plus fantasy points in 3 straight games and 4 of his last 5. So the return of Tua has helped him out greatly. Certainly in play, I prefer Kamara at that same price range, and I think I would rather pay $800 more to get if the ownership tilts. Right now, Achane is going overlooked. So as things stand, I would prefer Achane over Barkley. But if the ownership pivots and Achane is taking on ownership, I would think I'd pay up and get Barkley instead. Ken Walker third at 6.8K, a little bit too cheap. Najee Harris projects really well for 6K flat against the Browns. No problem with that. I mean, Najee just does not have like a monster ceiling usually. I think he proved me wrong in his last game. He had 24 fantasy points, but in his last 3 games, he failed to top 13 fantasy points. So he just does have, he's got like a safe floor. Like he's going to get you 10 plus fantasy points, but it's not every day that he gets you a 20 plus. So not really a guy I love to go to, but at 6K, we can definitely do that and feel pretty confident. I mean, Bucky Irving, 6.6, his price has come up quite a bit from where it was. Let's see, what was he last week? Yeah, 5.8, 30 fantasy points, 27 fantasy points the week before that. He's been crushing. The Raiders have been a friendly matchup to running backs at times on the year. Not so much lately. Yeah, not really grading out as a fun matchup. The third worst matchup against running backs over the last 4 weeks. So I'm not going to let that be the reason I fade Bucky. It looks like he's dealing with an injury of sorts, but if he's okay and starting at 6.6, he's a fine play. I do think DeAndre Swift at 5.7 is interesting just because the 49ers have been the very worst team against running backs over the last 4 weeks. If we think that holds, Swift is kind of interesting. But the best value at running back is undoubtedly Isaac Guerendo for the 49ers. Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason both out. Guerendo is 5.4K. So I would rather just play Guerendo. I'm a little surprised that his ownership isn't high. It's only at 6%. He just is a smash play, really, really efficient runner, really explosive player, ran like a 4.3 40 time. And if what they did with Jordan Mason after C-Mac went down in the first place is any indication, he's just going to get fed the rock and given the chance to succeed. The matchup with the Bears is not bad. The Bears in the last 4 weeks are like bottom 12, I think, against the run. So it's not bad at all. And just their system and the role he should have and the fact that they need to win out basically for a shot at the playoffs would make me feel pretty comfortable about him. His projection feels light, which is why I don't think everybody's on him. Plus his price is up at 5.4K, but I am game for rostering him at that price. Breece Hall is kind of cheap at 7K. He has been disappointing, as has the entire Jets offense. Not sure I feel the need to go do that. Kyren Williams, 7.3K at home. Like I said, I don't love the Bills side of that game, specifically also because the Bills have not been very good against fantasy running backs. Was it been on the year? Yeah, on the year, they're third worst. So this could be a Kyren game as they kind of dictate the pace here at home. So he's okay at 7.3. And one other guy I like, well, actually, two other guys. Tracy for the Giants at 5.8K, really, really cheap for a really good matchup with the Saints. The Saints over the last 4 weeks are bottom 10 defense against fantasy running backs, so that looks pretty darn appealing. And then there's Tony Pollard. He has a ceiling. Didn't really give us that ceiling last week with only 9 fantasy points, but he had it 2 weeks ago, 24 fantasy points, and he gets the Jaguars, who are a bottom 5 defense against fantasy running backs over the last 4 weeks. And really, they've been bad all year. So he looks really good too. Moral of the story, lots to like at running back. I do want to pay up at one spot for sure because the ceiling is just so massive with guys like Kamara and Saquon. I'll probably eat the chalk with Kamara just because it's $1,000 cheaper. But I'm not against using, that flex spot on a running back. So getting me 3 running backs for the week, I don't have a problem with that at all. All right, so while spending up a running back is certainly tempting, there's no wide receivers who are crazy expensive, and there's a lot that are worth rostering. There's no Jamar Chase here, but we get Justin Jefferson up top, not even 8K against the Falcons. The Falcons have not been stingy against wide receivers whatsoever. They are third worst over the last 4 weeks. So I love Justin Jefferson, my favorite wide receiver play of the week. He's not owned enough at 16%. I would imagine that spikes considerably, but he just looks really good. He has not been great. I'll admit that right off the bat. But he kind of bounced back with 16 fantasy points last week. If he could ever score a touchdown again, he would be a smash because he continues to have a really good role. So I'm not going to worry about it. It's a really good matchup at home, and he needs to get going, so I think he will. Puka is right behind him in terms of price and projection. I think Puka remains fine, but I think with Kupp being $700 cheaper and coming in with a nice projection, I'm just going to take the savings and go Kupp there. If you want to come back with a Falcon on the other side of the Vikings game, if you're stacking Vikings like I might be, Drake London at 6.4K looks pretty good, and he also has the third best projection among wide receivers this week. If you want to play Baker, Mike Evans looks good at 7.2K. He's been nicked up with 2 injuries, though, so just keep an eye on his status. Jacoby Myers looks like a really good pairing option with Aiden O'Connell, and at 5.6K, just looks like a really good play no matter what. He looks awesome. I got nothing bad to say about him whatsoever. Let's see here. Going down, Jerry Jeudy at 5.7. I do not think he's going to do what he did against Denver, but he is a little bit too cheap for his role, even though the matchup with the Steelers is not ideal. Tyreek Hill at 7.1K, a little bit cheap. The Jets are about to give up, truly give up. So at 7.1, I think he's worth a shot. Other guys, Brian Thomas Jr., 5.8, good price. Mac Jones is there for Trevor Lawrence, who's now out for the year, so I don't feel amazing about it, but it is a good price for a high upside guy. Let's see. Deebo Samuel has been terrible. Don't really want to play him against the Bears. I'd rather just play Garendo. Keenan Allen's been super involved. 49ers not the best matchup, though. There's nothing really that stands out here as we go down. For wide receiver, it is a pretty good spot to pay up for this week. I would just monitor the Mike Evans news in case those injuries are going to make him sit out a game. DK Metcalf is nicked up as well. DJ Moore is nicked up. So just keep an eye on those guys. Cedric Tillman, if he's out again, we could maybe look at Elijah Moore. And Trey Tucker at 4.6K is an okay value. He only had one catch last week, but it did go for a 58-yard touchdown. This Westbrook-Akeen guy for the Titans keeps scoring touchdowns. He has, 8 touchdowns on the year on 20 catches. He is insane. You can take a shot on him at 4.7K against the Jaguars. Doesn't feel safe, but it's there. Parker Washington at 4.4K, 12 targets last week, so we absolutely can look at him for value. Not seeing a whole lot else we have to do at wide receiver. I would just keep an eye on any injury news to see if any other value opens up. But yeah, that's pretty much it for wide receiver. Okay, so a tight end is pretty top heavy. Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. I kind of want one of them. Brock Bowers has been amazing. He's got the second best projection and the steepest price at tight end. He's still not expensive enough. 6.5K. There used to be Travis Kelce used to be 7.5 or pushing 8K. In his heyday. So I have no problem paying for Brock Bowers, especially if he's going to only be 7% owned. That said, Trey McBride is the best play of the slate at tight end. He's $400 cheaper. He has a slightly better projection, and he's still not the chalk at the position. That's actually going to TJ Hockenson and Evan Ingram. Granted, values, but TJ Hockenson was terrible last week. Evan Ingram's working with a backup quarterback, so excuse me, he had 9 targets though, so he's still getting the ball thrown his way. Just 1 touchdown on the year. Nice job, Evan. Those guys are good values, but not what I would call safe plays. David Njoku's coming off a monster 26-point fantasy week. I called that one on the Thursday night showdown slate. 17 targets last game. If Cedric Tillman remains out, Cedric Tillman or Njoku would look awesome at 5.1K. Dallas Goedert is probably going to be out. If he's in at 4.5, he's a solid value. But if he is out, like he's supposed to be, Grant Calcaterra at 3.5K is a decent value. Thing is, so I don't really want to take a punt at tight end because the ceiling is so massive with guys like Trey McBride and Brock Bowers. Those are the only guys I really want to talk about because Brock Bowers has been insane. 10 plus targets in each of his last 3 games, 33 plus fantasy points in 2 of his last 3 games. Trey McBride, 12 receptions in 2 straight games. Like, these guys just have crazy roles. I want one or both of them in most of my lineups. All right, to cap it off at defense. Defense is a total crapshoot. And like usual, I would rather just punt it and go cheap. If you want to play the matchups, obviously Steelers against Mr. Pick 6, Jameis Winston at 3.5, they are in play. Eagles against the Panthers, sure. I mean, they do look good. There's nothing wrong with that if you want to kind of eat an expensive defense. I think the most appealing option is going to be the Saints at 2.9K. They project really well. They are going to be owned, but they are facing Drew Lock. So that seems pretty good. 49ers at home against the Bears in a must-win game. I think they're okay, but they've been bad. So I will definitely note that. Dolphins against the punchless Jets offense. They look okay at 3.2. If we want to go mega punt, we can go down and play a good Browns defense at 2.4K. They might be my favorite defense of the slate. They're not the best value. That, like I said, that's going to be the Saints, but they are not going to be owned, and they are only 2.4K, and they are a good defense against Russell Wilson, who can be inconsistent at times. And they did hold the Steelers to 19 points in their last meeting. Other options, the Falcons they're an okay defense. I think you can consider them at 2.5 as a leverage on all the Vikings ownership. Like, Justin Jefferson and Darnold are going to be owned. So if you just don't want to play them, you can play a sprinkling of Atlanta defense and hope that it goes the other way. And then I think that, Bears defense is pretty good. If you want to bet on the 49ers just continuing to unravel, the Bears defense at 2.4K is another one worth trying. And I will remind you, the Bills traveling all that way out west is a big deal, in my opinion. So the Rams defense at 2.5K, especially if Bills end up carrying any ownership, that is another interesting play. All right, that is going to do it for me as far as the breakdown goes. Overall, I think as far as top plays of the slate go, Sam Darnold is the safest, best quarterback play. I do want to get a sprinkling of Aiden McDonald at 4.8K, but I think a lot of my lineups are just going to have, Sam Darnold. I'm not going to get cute about it. At running back, Isaac Guerrero is just too good of a value. I'm going to, that's just that's a flag plant for me. I'm going to sink or swim with the Guerrero at 5.4K. And then if I'm going to pay up, I'm looking at Alvin Kamara at running back or Saquon probably. But there are a lot of running backs to like, so I'm not going to, handcuff you to that at all. The wide receiver, I do really want Justin Jefferson. He looks like one of the best plays of the day. And he pairs with Darnold for a nice stacking. Cup looks like a really good value at 7K, but then we're looking at even better values like Jacoby Myers and who's the other guy I pointed out for wide receiver? Let's see here. I don't remember the other guy I was looking at. It was a punt. Anyways, the point is even Jacoby Myers alone at 5.6 looks really good. And then at tight end, I do want to pay up. My preference right now is Trey McBride because he's cheaper, but I really, really like Brock Bowers as well. All right. That does it for me. Hopefully this helps you out. If it did, smash that like button and also subscribe to the channel so you can catch all the videos we do just like this. Thanks for watching and good luck.